Here's an experiment for you. Take passionate experts in human resource technology. Invite cross-industry experts from inside and outside HR. Mix in what's happening in people analytics today. Give them the technology to connect. Hit record. Pour their discussions into a beaker. Mix thoroughly. And voila, you get the HR Data Labs podcast, where we explore the impact of data and analytics to your business. We may get passionate and even irreverent, but count on each episode challenging and enhancing your understanding of the way people data can be used to solve real-world problems. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I am your host, David Turetsky. Like always, we bring you fun, fascinating people from around the world of HR and beyond. Like always, we have with us our co-host, friend, and Salary.com employee, Dwight Brown. Hey, Dwight.
Hey, David. How you doing?
Very good. How are you?
Good.
And today, we have with us one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And I do not give that out lightly. Never. But we have with us Amy Leschke-Kahle. She is the Vice President of Performance Acceleration with the Marcus Buckingham Company, an ADP company. Hello, Amy. How are you?
Hello, David. Hello, Dwight. And that's quite an introduction. I feel a little bit of pressure to, say something brilliant.
Total pressure. Everything you say is brilliant. So don't worry. It'll be okay. Amy, why don't you give us a little bit about your background? Why don't you tell us how you got here? Because it's actually a fascinating story.
Yeah, well, I'm a chemical engineer, so naturally that fits right into the world of HR and data. Of course it does. It's an absolute natural transition. So I came to ADP, as you just introduced me through my title, through the Marcus Buckingham Company, and actually started with the Marcus Buckingham Company, I think 7.5 years ago now. Wow. And because we were a small company, I did all kinds of things for them, including lead product development. And when you're small, you do everything, including working with sales and all kinds of things. But as ADP acquired us, I kind of migrated and settled into doing actually my 3 favorite things, which is beautiful. And I'm so lucky to be able to kind of craft my own job, if you will. And that is I lead our applied research team. I lead our professional services team. So I spend most of my time working with clients and working with data and gathering insights and thinking about things we want to get curious about and learn more about in terms of the world of work. And then I spend a little bit of time doing this. I spent the bulk of my career as an HR practitioner, leading HR IT teams, HR analytics, pretty much everything in the talent field, learning and development, leader development, performance management, engagement, all the things. Spent a bit of time in academia and started my career as a chemical engineer in the pulp and paper industry.
Wow. That is basically living the dream as far as I'm concerned, because you've touched on so many awesome pieces and you'll have some really cool stories to share them. But one fun thing that no one knows about Amy is...
Oh, goodness. Well, my go-to is that I play the accordion incredibly poorly, but I do play the accordion.
That's awesome.
You didn't bring it with you today?
No, I didn't. If I would have known, I would have brought it. Is that an HR Data Lab first?
That would have been an HR Data Labs first.
It would have been, yeah.
Yep.
It would have been.
Totally. It would have been awesome.
If you want, we can actually get out all of the instruments we play or try to play, and we can jam on something like Stairway to Heaven or whatever.
Or we'll sing for you.
Yeah, next time. Yeah. We can do a little polka for you.
Okay.
Yeah, that was awful quick. Yeah, next time.
So our topic today is one very close to a lot of people's hearts who listen to the HR Data Labs podcast. It's the myth of measurement. And in today's world, it seems almost sacrilegious to say that. How can measurement be a myth?
Finding a great career has always been a challenge. But today, with the massive changes underway in just about every sector of the economy, in just about every country in the world, finding a great new career is even more challenging. And if you're a student, recent graduate, or someone else early in their career, it's even harder for you because you just don't have the experience that those who might be 10, 20, 30 years older than you have. The answer the podcast, From Dorms to Desks, a podcast by College Recruiter job search site, where every week we take a deep dive into a topic specifically of interest to candidates who are early in their careers and looking for a great part-time, seasonal, internship, or other entry-level job.
We have gotten so used to believing the phrase, and as an engineer, I kind of blame myself a little bit for this, or blame our profession, of what's measured gets done. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, it's not true at all. It's what's measured gets measured.
Right.
So it's not that measurement itself is a myth, although we can talk about the over-precision of measurement when we're talking about humans at work. But if you think about, just take temperature for an example, like human temperature. You're not feeling well, you take your temperature with a thermometer. And that's great. It helps you to know how sick you are. But taking your temperature does not lower your temperature. It doesn't impact your temperature. It's simply awareness, which is really important. So we've kind of grown up in this world of thinking that if we measure something, if we put something on a scorecard, that it's going to change. And that's not the case at all. And the same thing is true of people at work and humans at work. So for example, if we measure performance, that doesn't mean we're going to get more performance. If we measure engagement, we're not going to get more engagement. You have to do something. And that activity that you do is very different than the act of measuring.
But I mean, go back to your example, taking the temperature. Without context, without knowing what your earlier temperature was, without knowing the other symptoms involved, without knowing the trend in temperature, I guess I was saying before, and without knowing whether or not it's bad or good, without that context, whatever it is lacks any actionability at all. In the same way, I've said this in conferences before, I measured my kid one time and the temperature was 101. And my girlfriend was like, "Oh my God, we got to get your son to the hospital right now." And I said, "No, let me look it up." And I looked it up. It said, only take your kid to the doctor if their temperature is over like 103. And so context is everything. We know that 101 is bad. We don't know how bad it is though, right? So in that same context, Amy, what do we know without context, or what do we do without the context?
Yeah, context is king. It's so important. And as you mentioned, David, trend is critical because a single data point is super interesting. That's it. It's super interesting. So without context of knowing, is it going up? Is it going down? Is it flat? Is it steady? What's happening? When was the last time it changed? Right. Without that kind of information, it's simply an interesting number.
Right.
It reminds me a lot of and I have very publicly railed against all of the COVID measurements that were out there in the media. And the media was very fond of reporting what actual cases were for a day. Well, I mean, unless you followed and tracked on your own, there was none of the context that you're talking about. Like you said, is it trending up? Is it trending down? What other context is there? So I totally agree with you. It's the context is king when it comes to measurement.
Well, it kind of speaks as well to benchmarks, and we love benchmarks right. in HR, whether it be, salary benchmarks or engagement benchmarks or whatever it might happen to be. And benchmarks are also a little bit tricky as well, because benchmarks are helpful and they do give you context. Mm-hmm. But organizations and people and teams are unique. And so when we're comparing to benchmarks, it's often misleading because your benchmark, your norm, your kind of where you happen to settle in might be very different than someone else's. And although we look at temperature, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit is the, sure. The human, what we say normal temperature. People run different. Some people run a little warmer. Some people run a little cooler, just like organizations do. So I think we've gotten so used to thinking that because something has multiple digits after a decimal point, that it implies precision.
Absolutely.
And That's not always the case. You can take engagement as an example, or performance. Performance is such a great example of this, actually. But you measure someone's performance and you say, oh, your performance rating is a 3.79. And that 3.79 is better than the person sitting next to you who has a 3.60 performance review rating.
Yeah.
Really? I don't know if I can tell the difference between a 3 and a 4, let alone a 3.79 and a 3.6. So
Right.
we've carried over this scientific precision of some things into the world of uncountables. And particularly we do that in the world of HR because humans we're variable. We're very different and we're very unique. And it's led us, quite frankly, down a path of a lot of not so great practices in the world of people at work.
Yeah, but to be honest, what was before was either a vacuum, and we all know nature abhors a vacuum, especially the world of work abhors a vacuum, because people make up their own stuff for their own, or like managers will make up rules or make up, well, their own law if it suits them, to make their lives as a manager easier. And so having those things, having those measurements, having those benchmarks, having those policies, give them something to hold on to. They may be terrible, but the lack of them is even worse. And I've been working with a lot of clients, especially lately, who there was nothing. And putting in some structure means there has to be a change in culture, right? Because you can't just implement something, even if it's good. Yeah, actually, if it's good, it's probably worse. Implement something without change management, without training, without communications, because that will, people will resort to their old ways, wouldn't they?
I think to some degree, I kind of go to root cause. I'll put my engineer hat on a little bit and go to root cause. Well, like, what's the root cause of that? Like, how do we actually do some of these things? Like, I'm going to say measuring performance or measuring engagement or helping people do more better work. Like, let's go to the foundation and not settle for mediocre. Let's not settle for a bad practice just because it yields a number that we might want to do something like, I don't know, inform compensation with perhaps, or
Sure.
promotion, or decide who we're going to riff or not. Like
Right.
the data that we use in HR is so, one might even argue it's some of the most important data that we use in the world of work because of the downstream implications and the downstream decisions that we use. We're
Right.
impacting people's livelihoods with this data. And some of that data is not only poorly collected, infrequently collected, but some of it, quite frankly, is simply not even valid.
Well, and that's been, I guess, the criticism of performance management for so long, rightly so, because we set up this terrible expectation that you have to have at least 2 conversations a year around performance management. One is goal setting and the other one is performance evaluation. When there should be, and I know this is where you go typically, regular ongoing communications about what's expected between the manager and the associate and the employee, so that one can help the other. One might have one might have challenges and the other might have solutions. One might have roadblocks and the other might be able to pave the way. And it may not necessarily be the manager who paves the way for the employee. It might be the other way around. So having those regular conversations and then documenting them and measuring them, and I think this is where you're going to go. Those are great things. But to me, there's a little bit, when you get too regular, you get a little bit of artificial noise built in because it becomes too routine, right? It becomes too familiar and it becomes a check the box, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I think part of the problem is we're smushing 2 things together. We're smushing the get more performance with the performance measurement. So if you go back to that, what's measured gets measured, not what's measured gets done. The what's measured part, the performance measurement part of that, is a whole different process with different intended outcomes than the how we get more of it. So this conversation piece, you're right, David. You know this because you know our work that we do, that really frequent connections, really frequent moments of attention between particularly team leaders and team members are what moves the needle on performance and engagement. It's not the only thing, by the way, but it is the most powerful thing that we found. Great. Put that in a box, put a bow on it. That's the performance movement, performance acceleration, however you want to phrase that. On the totally other side of the kind of world at work equation, if you will, is performance measurement. And we don't measure, or I would say, at least our clients don't do this, we don't measure performance to get more of it. We measure performance to know where it is, to be able to see into the talent landscape, if you will, of the organization. And we use that data to inform downstream talent decisions. So we don't measure the conversations. Those are between a team leader and a team member. Like HR in our world, we don't go look and see what people are talking about or what that data looks like. We don't do any of that. That's a team leader, team member thing. And then fully on the other side of the fence, on the other side of that wall is, let's go get some data so we can see into the talent. Are there people that need help? Are there people that need support? And if organizations choose to use that data to inform downstream talent decisions, like potential, variable compensation, for example, great, you can do that too. However, understand that that data is not, it's not necessarily accountable in the world of knowledge workers. Like it's not a precise number, but it does give us some guidance around how team leaders are experiencing their team members' performance.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe. This podcast is made possible by Salary.com. Now, back to the show.
We're practitioners, though, Mimi. We love data and we love to try and measure things because we want to be able to help. We want to make better decisions using that data, right? So what's going on with this equation? What's wrong with the equation? What do we have to do to make the data better or the measurements better of the data, of the transactions, to make this more useful for us to make better decisions?
Well, weirdly, it's not making it more complicated. I think we've had history, if you will, that we know something's wrong, and so we make it more complicated. We add more complex models, competency models, all kinds of things that we try to get a number out of. And weirdly, it's not that. That's the opposite. It's counterproductive. What we do and with our clients and what we recommend and what they do, that's why we work with them, is actually kind of simplifying it. So if you think about what are the critical few things we need to know about employee performance, what are the critical few things? And a great way to kind of peel this back, David, is to ask team leaders, managers, the question of, do you know who your best people are? And of course they do, right? I mean, you've been a leader, you've led people, you know who your best people were in your team. Everybody does. It's like, of course. They go, of course I do. And if you ask them why, you typically get a very, very long pause. It's like, well, I don't know. You just know.
Right.
And when you ask why and let them pause and ponder for a minute, you get the same answer virtually every single time. And I've done this thousands of times. It's how we did some of the original work and kind of checked our original assumptions around how do we measure people performance at work. And the answer is they get high quality work done when you need them to get it done. So quality and productivity. And the second thing is this thing we call it teaminess because we didn't know what else to call it. So that kind of softer behavior thing, we tried to capture it with competency models, but that didn't quite work, and rating people against it, that doesn't quite work. So when you smush all that kind of softer stuff together, we just called it teaminess because we didn't know what to call it. And that's it. It's those two things. Can somebody get high quality work done? And I'm going to use kind of an Amy term and say, are they reasonable to work with? Like, that's it. And if you don't overcomplicate it and don't over-engineer that, it gives you some really interesting, incredibly useful data. Now, you can ask people, team leaders, the people who know someone's work best, to rate that. You can say a scale of 1 to 5. That works quite nicely. We love a 5-point scale. And you can get quantitative data from that. You have to be careful because you have to understand that we're kind of trying to count the uncountable, if you will. And in the world of knowledge workers, we don't often have countables.
But those two things seem a little bit subjective. I mean, they're very subjective, right? What are we trying to measure with teaminess? It's easy to work with, but is there something you can tie it back to?
100% it's subjective. Absolutely. We should not pretend particularly if you've got accountable, by the way, if an employee has a true objective countable that we can measure, that you can put your finger on. Sales is the easiest example of that. Does somebody meet their quota? Oh my gosh, you should so use that. Like 100% should use that. That's way better. But most of us don't have that. So we in HR and kind of the business world, if you will, have manufactured countables to say that we can count someone's or we can measure someone's performance objectively, which in most cases we can't. So we should just be really upfront and honest. Everybody knows it. We just don't say it. So we should be really clear about, hey, this is a subjective measurement, if you will, or subjective opinion of a team leader about a team member's performance.
But that is now impacting compensation decisions and the decisions around promotion and around, as you said, layoffs and reductions in staff. And one of the things that we get bitten by a lot is the subjectivity of a lot of the evaluation criteria we use often in HR. So does it really kind of hold up against that? Or is it something where, to your point, we should try and find the things that can be measured about a job and then measure it to be able to have that objectivity?
If there are objective measures, we should use them. Absolutely. In the world of information workers and knowledge workers, that often doesn't exist. And so we in HR, unfortunately, have oftentimes kind of manufactured accountable. Goals are a great example of that.
Yeah.
Smart goals, right? I mean, you could even take your work. Like, what's the quality of your podcast, David? That's a subjective measurement. Some people love it. Some people don't love it. Everyone loves it.
Wait. Who are these people who don't love it? I want names, comment. Amy. I want names.
I love your podcast, David.
Thank you.
So we've manufactured these things, and it's very convenient, right? Because it's a great cop-out to say, oh, you didn't get your 3% merit increase this year because your performance review was too low, or you got a 2.5 on your performance review, not a 3. And if you would have gotten a 3, we would have given you that 2.8% increase. But instead, you got a lower performance rating, so now you're only going to get a 2.7% increase. So we've manufactured this world of over-precision of this subjective thing that most of us do. We often refer to it as knowledge work. So you're right. The downstream implications in terms of promotions, in terms of merit increases, in terms of a lot of things we do with that data, I don't want to say we've kind of been living a lie, but we've kind of been living a lie. It's a great thing for us to lean into. It's like, oh, it's not my fault. It's not my fault that your performance rating was this number. It was a 2 point whatever, or 3.26. And so, it was below the cutoff. So sorry. And we're humans. Our world is made up of making lots and lots of judgment calls. And to pretend that a judgment call is not a judgment call and that it's some objective decision blamed, if you will, on some over precise number that somebody came up with because of, I don't know, some formula or some model that someone said was the perfect engineer, the perfect HR person. Right. It's kind of ridiculous.
Well, it's one of those things that we need to be very honest and prepared to mix both science and art. And that's a tough thing. That's a tough thing for a lot of people to swallow. It gets to that subjectivity that you talked about, the judgment calls you talked about. But at the end of the day, nothing is so scientific that it can be explained just by data points. There's always going to be that subjectivity there.
Well, especially when it comes to these emotional topics of getting an increase or getting an incentive award or losing your job or getting promoted. They require the recipient to know why.
Right.
When you and your employee or you and your manager sit together, maturity is sometimes tossed out the window because the employee wants to know why, what rule, what policy, why did I get this, or why did this happen to me? And that's the reason why, Amy, I was talking about before, that over subjectivity, gets into arguments with employees, and the manager falls back on, whatever creative crap they can come up with in their mind if they don't have good policy or good rules to stand behind and say, well, the reason why we did this was this and this. And next year, if you perform better, you'll have potential to get this. Managers don't go to school to learn that. And it needs us, the practitioners, as well as the people who write those policies and help companies figure out these policies, to write good scripts and to give managers good insight as to how do I communicate this, right?
Yeah, we could talk for hours around it, just one problem or highlighting one issue or focusing on an issue such as measurement that we're doing today kind of leads to a whole nother discussion around, well, how do we do some of those other practices? Merit increases is a great example of that. Well, if we're saying this measurement in quotation marks of a person's performance in the world of work, to a large degree for many of us is subjective because we don't have objective countables. Yep. Well, then what do you do with merit increases if you're saying that this data isn't particularly precise and we try to over precision, whatever that word would be, merit increases? Well, what do we do with that? Well, maybe we need to rethink how we do merit increases. Well, wow. Okay. Well, that's a whole different thing. Maybe merit increases are too granular because we can't differentiate between, really good and really, really good. That leads to a big open question. And it's one that our clients, again, struggle with every single day, because once you kind of start to go, oh, this is not a little bit subjective, but it's actually a lot subjective. Well, then what are all the downstream implications of kind of realizing that? And it's a lot of rework and a lot of re-engineering. But employees, what we have found anyway, what I have found is that employees go, oh, well, this makes so much more sense now. I get, and you stop saying, well, I'm going to blame HR. So sorry that you couldn't get exceeds expectation this year because you were that last year and I only have so many 4s to give. So this year you're 3. But by the way, a 3 is not a C. That's not a C. I know it's not. I know you think it is, but it's actually not. And it's not my fault anyway. It's HR's fault. They made me give you a 3 because you got a 4 last year. And there's only so many I can give.
So that gets us to the next question, which is, with everything we've just talked about, how do we actually get more employee contribution? Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make employees happier, to feel better about their situation, and to buy into this company that we're talking about, this fictitious company, being a place that they want to work and they want to actually believe in and be able to, give themselves to.
It's a great question, David. And I'll tell you what we found. Again, it's not the only thing, but one of the biggest things that we found, and it's one that can actually easily be implemented by anyone, is to create a culture of high attention at work between your most important people. So for most of us, that's our team leader. Not all of us, but most of it's our team leader. Call them your manager, whatever term your organization happens to use. And by frequent, I mean at least once a week. So really light touch. It doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't have to be over-engineered or over-scripted, but not a drive-by. Drive-bys are fine. I hear this from team leaders and managers all the time. Oh, I talk to my people every day. We talk all the time. But driving by, doing that walk by or kind of phone call, that quick thing of going, oh, how you doing? Yeah, I'm good, fine. That's not it. It's got to be focused on what are your most important work that you need to get done? Right. Do you need anything from me? And through that strengths-based lens of you're not a broken person. You are a person with all kinds of opportunity and potential. And my job is to help you put that on the table more, not to fix you, but to help you do more of your own unique best work. And that's true anywhere in the hierarchy. So creating that culture, that habit, that practice, that expectation that we pay really frequent attention to our most important people. Through that strengths-based lens, I see you for the best of you. Yes, I see you for all of you and all the flaws and all the things that drive me crazy. But first and foremost, I see you for the best of you. Doing that really frequently is the not so secret sauce to performance, productivity, engagement, all the things. I mean, you could think about it maybe outside of work. A good way to kind of get your mind around, or some people go like, what? Is it that really that simple? Like we don't have to do quarterly IDPs? No, you don't. Please don't do that. Oh my goodness, don't do that. And think about it outside of work. And so when someone says really frequently to you, sincerely, authentically, I love you really, really frequently, it's like, oh, that's a game changer versus I love you once a year. Like,
Yeah.
it's not even a question. And what we're doing inside of work when we create that practice and that habit of frequent attention through a strengths-based lens on your most important things, your most important work, it's, oh, you see me, you acknowledge me. Thank you for seeing the work and the contribution that I'm giving to the organization. There's other things, but that habit we have found through the data is critical. Anywhere between employees who receive frequent attention from their most important people at work, it can be 1.5 to 2.5 to 3.5 times more likely to be fully engaged or all in at work than those who don't receive that kind of attention.
How does this change with working at home? Does the attention change? Does it become something different? Does it mean that they have to have an in-person meeting, or does it mean they have to Zoom? What does that evolve to in the world of work of most people working from home, and knowledge workers at least working from home?
So there was a study that the ADP Research Institute put out recently called the 2022 People at Work Study. And there was some fascinating data in there. And one of the things that it found is it looked at a number of factors, including things like there was some career questions in there. There was some kind of retention type questions. And people who were working from home, who were working offsite, actually responded more favorably to many of the items on the survey than people who were working on site. And I don't know if I have a hypothesis. I don't have any data to support this. But if you think about people who are not working in the same place, and I think about this with my team that I work with every day. When I call them, when I pick up the phone, or when I do a huddle on Slack, for example, it's usually not, oh, what are you doing today? How's it going? What's the weather like wherever you are? It's not that. It's usually really intentional. Like, I have a reason to call you. Like, I'm going to talk about something. And I think, I don't know this for sure, but I think it's actually because we are more intentional when we're not sitting next to each other. And it's that intentionality of, what are you working on? What's the most important work you need to get done? Do you need anything from me? Are you doing okay? That's really important as well.
Sure.
But when we're not sitting in the same place, oftentimes our conversations are more intentional about work. And that's a difference maker versus doing the drive-by, what'd you do last night? That's fine, by the way. But the thing that moves the needle on engagement and performance and productivity, not the only thing, but that really frequent attention about things that are really important to me. And in the context of work, that's the work I do.
One of the fun things I get to do with working with people like Dwight on a daily basis is that they know that I'm always there, and that not only am I a phone call away, but I'm literally a Teams meeting away. And it used to be the case, and I've been in the world of work for over 30 years, that people couldn't find me. I was on a client meeting. I was out. I was doing things. I was always on the move, or I was traveling. And so a lot of times what used to be thought of as FaceTime, people being in the office or whatever, had a lot of gravity, right? Because you were with people, you felt their presence. But now they know how to get me. They know where I am. And I'm always a phone call or a Teams meeting away. Isn't that kind of one of the interesting changes to working at home and to the ability to communicate via smartphone or computer or whatever, or even our watches these days? Hasn't that really changed the equation for the world at work?
100% has changed the equation. It will be fascinating to see what happens in the months and, not so many years ahead about how much of this sticks with the world of work. Right. And you've probably experienced this and talked to folks on the podcast and worked with folks who have, I'm going to say in quotation mark, kind of mandated people to come back into the office. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves and how sticky that is. Certainly most of us have experienced, as we've been, some of us for a long time have been working offsite or working from home or working from wherever, and have experienced that feeling of being treated like a grown-up. I mean, we're kind of grown-upifying. This has kind of caused us or forced us to grown-upify work a little bit. It's like, I don't need to see you sitting in front of a computer to know that you're contributing to the organization. I don't need to count the minutes that you're sitting there. And for many of us, I think just as humans, it's really nice to be treated like a grown-up.
There was a time, Amy, in one of my previous roles where I used to commute 250 miles to go to work. And I used to drive down 250, work from Sunday night to Wednesday night, and then drive home. And it did tremendous things to my life. It changed my stress levels. It changed my ability to relate to my kids when I stopped doing that work. But of course, I had to leave that job because the leadership believed that it was better to have someone in place, co-located. But I also managed people around the world, and I didn't commute to them, although I did travel to them once or twice a year to see them, to speak with them, to listen to what their problems are. But again, they were a phone call or a Teams meeting away most of the time. And so I think you're right. I think the world of work is maturing to trust and believe, given that we had to over the last 2 years because we couldn't be co-located. It wasn't possible. But I think it's going to change. I think you're right. I think we will see, or we should see, major changes to how work gets done, especially from the knowledge worker perspective. Manufacturing still has to be in person, obviously. Retail still has to be in person for the most part. Still today. Maybe that'll change. But so does it change our equation at all of what we measure or how we measure and how we look at those results for what we've been talking about because of that difference in co-location?
We certainly have to take into account the type of work and the regulatory and compliance aspects of that for some types of work. We pay some people based upon the time they spend doing the work.
Sure.
For those that are not under those compliance, regulations, those rules, I think it absolutely changes it. We've seen organizations and, many organizations experimenting with 4-day work weeks, for example, and not just 4 10s, but 4 8s.
Yeah.
And, of course, Tim Ferriss and the 4-hour work week, right? Many years ago when he wrote that book. I think it's worth it for all of us to think about it and challenge it and not rely on the old assumptions that for someone to make a meaningful contribution at work requires 40 hours or 50 hours. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. So if we can focus more and start to, again, treat people like grown-ups, then perhaps maybe work itself will become more grown-up, and perhaps maybe we'll act more like grown-ups in the context of work. I mean, we shouldn't have to raise our hand to go to the bathroom anymore. Like, that was second grade. I think we're over that. But yet, kind of an extreme example, but yet that's still the case in some places.
It definitely is still the case in some places. In fact, I've seen policies which talk about SOPs, and those SOPs demand, that certain things happen at certain times. So I think you're right. I think there needs to be this maturity that people bring to work, and then there needs to be a maturity level that managers and supervisors can trust that those employees are being mature and making mature decisions. Unfortunately, we know that there are a lot of employees who take advantage of situations, right? Especially with things like unlimited PTO. And it requires managers and HR to measure and be able to stay on top of them so they don't. It's sad, but hopefully there is that level of maturity.
And I think we have to pick as organizations, right? We have to pick. We have to choose. Are we going to start that conversation? We as organizational leaders and human resource practitioners, are we going to be the instigators of a grown-up workplace? Or are we going to wait for somebody else to do it? My recommendation would be is that we do it, that we're the ones who instigate that. And we say, hey, you're a grown-up. Not only are you a grown-up, but you're a super smart grown-up. Yeah. And we're going to see you for the best of you. We're going to put practices in place that treat you like a super smart grown-up. And the exception is going to be what you just talked about, David. The exception is going to be the person who might take advantage of some of those policies. And we're going to treat that like the exception. But the rule is going to be, you're a super smart grown-up. We trust you to do amazing work. If that doesn't happen, we're going to deal with that separately. That's the exception process.
Right.
But for the rest of us, for the other 99% of us who are doing great work, and the 99% of you who are coming into work and contributing, we're going to treat you like that. I think we can do that. We have the ability, and now we've proven that is a reasonable way to approach work. I think we ought to go do that, because I think employees are going to choose. They're going to choose to work at organizations that treat their employees like grown-ups. And if you're not doing that, I think you're putting your organization at risk.
I love the term voting with your feet when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's better for us to do it on our own terms as opposed to waiting to the point where we have to do it on somebody else's terms.
Absolutely.
Perfectly said. So, Amy, we've talked about a lot today. We've talked about the myth of measurement. We've talked about what it is and how, as practitioners, we need data. We need good data to make better decisions. We've talked a lot about the policies and procedures that underlie really broken assumptions in HR and how we need to change them. And we've also tried to figure out how we can eke better contribution out of employees by treating them like mature humans and adults. Anything else you wanted to talk about before we close?
I hope we, the royal we, HR practitioners in particular, but also organizational leaders, I hope that we use this as an opportunity. None of us want the tragedy of COVID. Like that's clearly not a good thing, but it has left us a bit of a gift. And I think it would be a shame to not utilize that gift that we've been given to rethink work, to treat people more like grown-ups, to be more responsible with the data that we use and not simply assume that because we've got multiple digits after a decimal point that it's more precise.
Right.
Not pretend that much of the data that we use is objective when it's not, and we all know it's not. So we've got an opportunity here to, as I often like to say, to go be smart. Let's go be smart. We're smarter now, and it would be a shame if we didn't put those smarts to use.
Brilliantly said. Thank you so much. You're a pleasure. And we invite you back again at some point.
Thanks so much, David. I'd love to come back again. And thanks, Dwight.
Thanks for being here with us. We appreciate it.
And thank you, Dwight. And thank you all for listening. Take care and stay safe.
That was the HR Data Labs podcast. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you know anyone that might like to hear it, please send it their way. Thank you for joining us this week, and stay tuned for our next episode. Stay safe.